In Mark chapter 14, Jesus is the recipient of an amazing gift, an act of love so beautiful that when it happened, he said the story about it should always be remembered. In Mark chapter 14, beginning with verse 3, and while he was at Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, as he was reclining at table, a woman came with an alabaster flask of ointment of pure nard, very costly, and she broke the flask and poured it over his head. There were some who said to themselves indignantly, "Why was the ointment wasted like that? For this ointment could have been sold for more than 300 denarii and given to the poor." And they scolded her. But Jesus said, "Leave her alone. Why do you trouble her? She has done a beautiful thing to me. For you always have the poor with you, and whenever you want, you can do good for them. But you will not always have me. She has done what she could. She has anointed my body beforehand for burial. And truly, I say to you, wherever the gospel is proclaimed in the whole world, what she has done will be told in memory of her." As Mark tells this story that Jesus said was so beautiful, this act of love that was so memorable, one that the Spirit inspired him to record, much as he inspired Matthew and John to record it in their gospel accounts too. Jesus highlights for us here what true love for him looks like. And it looks like a woman, a humble woman, a woman who's not even named in Mark's telling of the story here, though we know who she is from the other gospel accounts, approaching Jesus to show her devotion to him, not because she was compelled or commanded to. She, from her own means, from her own initiative, chose a way, a costly way, a way which took a great deal of the treasure that she had to express to Jesus the honor, the love that she believed he was worthy of. It was what she could do. And Jesus saw it and said it was beautiful. Now, sometimes the beautiful things that we do to honor Jesus aren't always appreciated by other people, even other followers of Jesus. Because in this case, some of those gathered around there sharing in that meal, we know from the gospel accounts, was actually from among Jesus' own apostles, didn't recognize this outpouring of love on their Lord and teacher and friend as being a beautiful thing. They saw it as a costly waste. They scolded the woman for expressing her love to Jesus in this way. They thought, as many of us, especially many of us men do, in fiercely practical terms that didn't really have a category for beautiful. They just wanted what needed to be done as cheaply as possible. And because of that, they saw this as a great waste. That same ointment could have been sold and could have received as much money as a laborer would make in an entire year. And think of how much could be done with resources like that. Think of how many people could be helped, but they were missing the point. Because the point is Jesus. And isn't it fitting at this point in Mark's gospel account, after giving us so many reasons to know who Jesus is as God's Son, to love him as we're drawing nearer and nearer to the cross that awaited Jesus there in nearby Jerusalem, that he includes this story to show when you know Jesus, when you love Jesus, any sacrifice we make, whatever we can do to show him how much he means to us, it's worth it. It's beautiful. And he himself makes it even more beautiful because this woman, Jesus' own apostles, didn't realize what was coming in those days ahead when Jesus would be arrested, tried, crucified, when Jesus would die there in Jerusalem. Even though Jesus had told his apostles over and over again, their hearts were too hard, as this episode demonstrates, to fully comprehend just what it was God was working out at that moment. But Jesus knew what awaited him. So when he received that love, it meant even more to him than the woman could have hoped or realized. It took on deeper spiritual significance because Jesus recognized that as anointing him for his burial. That was a custom for Jewish folks then, that part of the internment of a body would be preparing it for burial, but Jesus' own death that would soon follow would happen so hastily that all those preparations couldn't be taken. And when some of these women would arrive at Jesus' tomb to prepare his body later, his body wouldn't be there because Jesus would rise from the dead. This woman didn't know any of that at this point. But her faithful act of beautiful, self-sacrificing love served that function. Jesus' body would never be anointed for burial otherwise, for the most wonderful reason, his resurrection. But her initiative, her humility, her being able to do what she can, her love, accomplished something so meaningful, something that would be remembered forever. And it's not an either or to our more practical concerns. It's not a choice between loving Jesus or helping the poor. In fact, when our priorities are right, if we love Jesus like that, we'll love those that he cares about. We'll love those that he always saw, that he always noticed, that he did what he could to show compassion and lift up. But we do need to do it in the right order. We need to remember what Jesus tells us to remember. And he tells us to remember a woman whose love was so pure that there was no price too great to show Jesus how much honor she held him in. That there was no sacrifice too far that she didn't feel that he was worth. He was absolutely worthy of all of that love and adoration. And as we come to know and love Jesus through Mark's eyes, we should have that same beautiful spirit towards him with what we bring to